Hello, everyone. Welcome to this video on learning the basics of importing data into R. We're going to learn how to import SPSS files, CSV files, and Excel files. So let's get right to it. We're going to start by opening up a new Quarto document. So File, New File, Quarto document. We'll call this Learning to Import Data. We'll make sure the output is HTML and then press Create. We have our new Quarto document. As usual, we can delete everything from line 6 on, and we'll make our own headings. So let's first make our heading called load packages, because we've got to load our packages just like last time. However, we're going to add a little twister. We're going to make it a little bit more complicated in the code, but the goal is to create a nicer looking web page as the output. And we're going to do that by adding tabs to the output. So here's how you do that. We start off with 3 colons, and then in curly braces, you write dot panel dash tab set. Then add some white space, add 3 more colons, and now every heading inside here is going to produce a tab in the output. So let's see, we'll need Haven as a package. We're going to want to use tidyverse, and we're going to want to use a package called OpenXLSX. And now when I press render, first we'll save it. We'll save this as import data assignment. And now we have this nicely organized web page which has Haven, tidyverse, and OpenXLSX. Now all we have to do is add the code to import or to load those packages. And for that, we're going to take the easy way out, which is what I recommend all of you do. You know, in the previous assignment, we learned how to load packages. And so we're just going to copy that code from the previous assignment and paste it in here. So here's my code for loading the Haven code. And then here's my code for loading the tidyverse package. And if we press render, we'll see how nicely this all looks. So now here's Haven, a nice description of what Haven does, the code to load it. Here's tidyverse, a nice description of what tidyverse does, and then the code to load it. And now all we're left with is OpenXLSX. And for this, we will just copy again the code once again. But instead of tidyverse, we're going to write OpenXLSX. And this is the strategy that I use for loading all packages in R. I don't have this code memorized. I always go back to a previous document I've worked on and I copy and paste the code. And if there's a new package I'm using, like in this case, OpenXLSX, I just copy and replace the keywords that need to change. All right, so let's run this. And so now we've got Haven, tidyverse, and OpenXLSX. So very nice. But one last thing to do is to change the description of OpenXLSX so that I'll know what this does. So I'm going to go to Packages. I'm going to look for OpenXLSX. Oh, not seeing it. Let's update this maybe. Oh, you know what? We ran it to produce a web page. We didn't actually run it to affect our working environment. So let's run these now. Let's import Haven. Let's import tidyverse. Let's open XLSX. This might be a problem that you come across when you're working on the assignment yourself. You've been pressing render, but you haven't been hitting play, and so the packages aren't showing up in the the packages aren't showing up in the packages list here. So let's see if we can get OpenXLSX to appear now for us. OpenXLSX, there it is. We've got it with the check mark. And the description is just to read, write, and edit XLSX files. So let's put that in here. We'll just go read, write, and edit XLSX files. Oops, XLSX. X. Oh no. There we go. All right, so we've got our packages. Now we can do the work of importing the data. So I'm going to make a new level 2 heading called import data. And once again, I'm going to add some tabs so everything is nicely organized. So that's going to be check, check, check like that, or colon, 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 I should say. Then the curly brace, and oops, then the curly brace dot panel dot tab set. 3 more colons at the bottom, sorry, just 3. And now we can add some more headings. So let's do a heading where we learn how to import Excel files. And then let's do a heading where we learn how to import CSV files. And finally, a heading where we learn how to do SPSS files. And you know what, let's do one more just for fun. We'll do SPSS files from the web. And if we press render, we will see, again, these nice little sections. So our web page is much more neatly organized now. And this will be very useful when we get to the more complicated assignments that have hundreds of lines of code. So we can easily, this will allow us to easily find what we're looking for when we're going through the web page. All right, so let's see. We need to, if we want to import data, we've got to get data into our files folder. So to do that, we are going to go to our course's OSF page, and we're going to download these 3 files, the Harry Potter dataset.csv, .sav, and then .xlsx. So let's do these all one at a time. I'm going to first click on Harry Potter data.csv. It loads up nicely. We can see all the data. And we're going to click these 3 dots, press download. And now they are in my downloads folder. All right, let's do the next one. We'll do the SPSS file next. Again, we can see the data. We'll download it. And let's do the final one. XLSX, the Excel file. So now all 3 of those files are in my downloads folder. Return to posit.cloud. And now I need to upload them to my files tab here. So I'm going to find the upload button and choose a file. First, we'll do Harry Potter CSV. Then we'll do Harry Potter SAV. And finally, we'll do Harry Potter XLSX. So now all 3 files are in my files directory here. So now I can access them through the code. So let's do the first one, Excel. All right, so let's see. We're going to start by adding a chunk of our code. So I'll hit the green C button here, get the nice chunk. I see the play button so I can run the code individually. We're going to call this dataset.xlsx. And it gets, so we have this left assignment operator. Whatever's on the right side is going to put into whatever's on the left side. It gets the value of read.xlsx. And inside here, we just type the name of the file, which is Harry Potter data.xlsx. When I run this, we get that nice little green bar, but maybe it looks like nothing happened. To check if it worked, we come to our environment up here. Now here's our environment. It has one data variable called dataset.xlsx. It is 123 observations of 90 variables. So let's just examine this whole line of code now that we've got it working. Let's now understand what the parts of it do. The first part is dataset.xlsx. That is a variable. It's a variable that we just made up. We could have called it anything we wanted, but we called it dataset.xlsx because that's, I feel, a very descriptive name. Here we have the words read.xlsx. This is a function. We can't call that anything we want. It has to be exactly read.xlsx. Next, we have inside the parentheses after the function, we have the name of the file. So what we can interpret that as this function can only work if it knows the name of the file, right? That makes perfect sense. So we tell it the name of the file, it imports it for us. And then this little, again, this left arrow, so it's a less than minus sign, left arrow, left assignment operator, that puts whatever's on this side into this side. So what happens is read.xlsx downloads the data or imports the data from our files directory and then puts it into, or this little symbol here, puts it into the variable we made up. So looking good. Let's take a look at dataset.xlsx. We can do that by going to our environment and clicking on the word dataset.xlsx. I click on it and the whole dataset pops up. We can see all the variables here. This is really great. Now, one thing I want to point out though is that the names of the variables are repeated. Now that's something that we could fix. However, I want to point out that it's not just that the variable names are repeated. We're actually getting the question wording, which is really useful information. But at the same time, we'll have to remove it. If we want to get the average of all the values in this particular column, well, we can't have one of the columns being text, right? And in fact, this whole column, FFM8, it should just be a numeric column, right? It should be numbers. But because there's one value that is characters, the whole thing becomes characters. And again, that's something that we can fix. We can get much more complicated. But for now, we're not going to do that. We're just going to just notice that that's a problem that we can fix later. All right, now let's do the same thing for CSV. So we're going to add another chunk of our code. We're going to go dataset.csv gets the value of read_CSV. And then inside the parentheses, in quotations, we're going to write Harry Potter data.csv, just like that. We'll hit run. Looks good. So we have some information just telling us about how it interpreted all the variables. And we see that in our environment, we now have a new variable called dataset.csv. It has one additional observation than dataset.xlsx. So let's take a look at dataset.csv if we can figure out what this additional observation is. And what we see here is that we have not only the values of the wording of the questions, I should say. We also have some information about, I believe, what this question was called maybe in Qualtrics when the survey was collected or the data was collected. So we're getting these two extra variables. In addition, this particular data set doesn't have numbers for the variables, it has words. So if we're going to be analyzing this, we've got to convert these words into numbers and so on. And that's something that we can easily do later. We're not going to do it today, but I'm just wanting us to get into the habit of looking at our data and just seeing what some of the problems are that we'll have to solve. So we've already seen two, right? One is these extra, or the wording of the question as the first value in each column is going to cause problems. And we've also seen that sometimes instead of numbers, you get the words, so you have to learn to convert them. So these are all things that we'll learn to fix later in the course. All right, so let's do SPSS now. Once again, we'll insert a chunk of our code. We'll call the variable this time dataset.SPSS, and it gets the value of a function called read_SAV. And again, we'll just type the name of the file in here. So when we run this, we now get a third data or variable up here, dataset.SPSS. This one only has 122 observations. So let's take a look and see what's missing. when we look at it, we can see now that, oh, this only has the actual responses from participants in the columns, right? There's no, the wording of the question is actually stored in the question, like the metadata about the question, right? Like is FFM2, and below it, we see the wording of the question, right? So it's not a separate row, it's just part of the heading. And this is really useful to have it in this form. And so throughout the course, we'll be using SPSS data files rather than Excel data files or CSV data files because they do a really great job of organizing the data for us, right? It's already the case that, or it only includes as rows responses from participants, and the wording of the questions are still there. They're just in the headings or in the names of the variables themselves. So this is all very useful. All right, back to SPSS. We're going to do one more thing, which I think is really useful, really helpful to know how to do. And that is, we're going to go to make a new chunk of our code, and we're going to call this dataset.spss.web. And we're going to actually download the data, not from our Files tab, but from the internet itself. And this is really convenient. So you don't have to constantly be downloading new versions of your data. You can always just be accessing it from the same location. So it's the same exact function though, read underscore SAV. And then in the quotations, we've got to put the location of the file, which is on the web. So we're going to go back to OSF. We're going to come back to the SPSS file, Harry Potter data SAV. And we're going to click on those three dots. But instead of left clicking download, we're going to right click or control click download. And we're just going to copy the link. This is the key move to be able to access data from the web. I'll just paste it there. So that is the location of the data on the web. We press play. And now we have a new dataset, dataset.spss.web with 122 observations and 90 variables, the exact same thing as what is stored in our computers. And so now we know two ways of accessing data, or of importing data. We can import it directly from our Files tab, or we can import it directly from the internet, either way. I'm going to press render one last time so we can see what all our work looks like. And just to review what we did. So first we had a section called loading packages where we loaded the Haven, Tidyverse, and OpenXLS packages, and we organized them in tabs. This is going to be so helpful when we have lots and lots of packages for our more complicated assignments later. Then we imported the data. We imported it 4 times. We imported it once as Excel, once as a CSV file, once as an SPSS file, and then the same SPSS file, but from the web. So now we know how to import 3 different types of files. We know how to import them from the web and also from our Files tab.